And now we would like to welcome our guest speaker, Kristy, who is the founder of Your Planning Career, an organization that supports career development for planners.
All right. So hi, everyone. I'm delighted to be joining One Up and Urban Minds tonight to discuss career possibilities in city building and more specifically urban planning, which is my area of expertise, although I can definitely speak to many different career paths in city building as well. So looks like it's a smaller group tonight, which will be nice. We'll have a chance for some intimate discussion. So, hi, this is me. My name is Kristy Kilborn, and I am an urban planner. I am an independent planning consultant, so I do work on behalf of municipalities, on behalf of developers in the development industry. And also I represent and work with residents who have concerns and want to provide input into development projects in their neighborhoods as well. As was mentioned, I founded an organization called Your Planning Career that provides career support for planners. So I do a lot of one-on-one career coaching, working with urban planners and aspiring planners from all across Canada and the US mostly, as well as a lot of internationally educated and experienced planners looking to practice in Canada. I do a lot of work with the planning schools, including Toronto Metropolitan University, who was the sponsor for tonight's discussion as well. I'm an instructor and curriculum developer as well for Seneca College, their Sustainable Planning and Development program, as well as I teach at Fleming College in Lindsay in their Environmental Land Management program. And I do some work out of the University of Waterloo, which is Canada's largest planning school, where I am also currently pursuing a PhD in urban and regional planning. And my focus for my research is on planning practice. And I spent over a decade working in public sector planning in city and regional government. So during that time, I worked on a lot of policy and strategic initiatives. I worked at smaller municipalities, larger municipalities as well. I worked on urban planning policy. So the official plan documents, those are the land use planning documents for various cities and regions as well. I worked on sustainability plans and development guidelines, urban design guidelines, climate change adaptation and mitigation plans as well. Emergency management planning for around the Pickering and Darlington nuclear plants, agricultural and rural planning, cultural heritage, so preserving cultural heritage resources, as well as community improvement, and worked a lot on the 407 extension when it was coming through Durham region in the east. And working on salvaging heritage buildings with the Ministry of Transportation, and a major project that is east of Durham in the East End. It's called Port Granby, and it was a low-level radioactive waste storage site. So working with the federal government, the host communities, as well as the conservation authorities to develop a plan for the lands surrounding that facility as well. So quite a diverse background of different projects. I am a registered professional planner in Ontario, member of the Ontario Professional Planners Institute, as well as a member of the Canadian Institute of Planners. I am also a certified planner in the US. So one of the nice things about being a member of the Canadian Institute of Planners and having gone through my professional designation process is that they have reciprocal agreements with other countries around the world, being the US, of course, as well as Australia, New Zealand. So I know a lot of other urban planners who have used that to actually work abroad as well. As far as my educational background, I mentioned I'm pursuing my PhD at the University of Waterloo in their planning program, but I do have an accredited master's degree in planning from York University, where I did my master's in environmental studies and urban and regional planning. And then I have an undergraduate degree in a related area in environmental studies. And a specialization that I did in my undergrad was environmental politics, policy, and law. So that's a little bit about my career path, my own personal trajectory as well. But I wanted to get into a little bit more about what actually is urban planning. So I guess I'll just open it up in the chat in case anyone wants to add some thoughts around what they think urban planning is. Are there any comments in the chat?
Checking, not seeing anything at the moment. Feel free to
Okay.
unmute yourself, whoever, if anyone would like to participate.
All right, so people could just type in the chat as they wish. Is that someone there? Management of resources in cities. Perfect. Town planning. Yep. Yep, that's great. So the goals and objectives of planning are to create livable, sustainable, and equitable communities. So these could be cities, they could be rural communities as well. And another goal and objective of planning is actually to regulate land use and development so that it doesn't happen sort of haphazardly, and that we are actually protecting people and property from things like natural hazards and flooding, flood-prone areas as well, and to coordinate public and private investment as well. So I really like this TikTok video. Let me just try to restart it here and make sure you can hear. But let's see.
Means
Okay.
creating safe cities and communities while preserving local culture.
Urban planning is taking all the beautiful things that you love about a city and preserving it, and then looking at the things that aren't working and finding solutions to make those part of the city better.
Planning is planning for the future, for future generations, making sure that everybody has an improved quality of life.
What urban planning means to me is creating an environment that has access and opportunities for everyone. Planning is the connection between people and their environment.
Innovating for the future. Urban planning to me is the way that we connect people with the places and things that they need to go and do in order to live a happy and fulfilling life, and the way that we can do that sustainably.
To me, planning is shaping our built environment to best suit our society's needs and desires.
Urban planning for me is about creating places where people can walk and bike to their destinations, get physical activity, and really have an active, healthy lifestyle.
So urban planning to me is the built environment and its relationship to people. And there's good urban planning and there's bad urban planning.
All right, so hopefully that gives you a little bit of a flavor of planning. So planners solve many of today's challenges. And some of those challenges include addressing climate change and protecting our natural environment. And I actually worked with, in my coaching work that I've done, a zookeeper who decided to go into planning because they were in Calgary, actually during a major flood event in Calgary, and they had to work to get some of the animals to safety, or to decide which animals they were actually going to save or not as well. And that made such an impact on that person that they decided that they never wanted to see that kind of thing happen again, for animals, for people. And so they decided to go into planning in order to be able to play a bigger role for that. Planners also address the housing affordability challenge that I think we've all heard about or are experiencing as well. So planners provide housing. And I know a number of planners who got into planning work because they were from social housing communities themselves, and they wanted to play a role in providing good quality, affordable rental housing accommodations or community housing accommodations for communities, and give back based on their lived experience. Lots of planners work in transportation, so supporting mobility, whether that's cycling, whether that is road networks, autonomous vehicles, all sorts of micro mobility like e-scooters, and that sort of thing. Ride sharing is having big impacts on transportation planning. Of course, transit, rapid transit systems. There are quite a number of planners involved with all of the subway extension projects that Toronto has on the go at the moment, and airport planning as well. So planning for air travel too. So these are some challenges. And then some of the other challenges that planners work on and play a role in is also in supporting prosperity. So economic development, creating jobs, as well, tourism, and supporting tourism and expansion of tourism and community beautification initiatives as well. Creating vibrant and healthy communities. So there are a lot of planners that work in health departments too, to try to influence healthy community design. There are a lot of planners who are focused on placemaking and the vibrancy of places as well. And I think one organization that does a lot of this pretty well and is very well known is 8 to 80 Cities, whose mission is to create cities, vibrant cities, for people, of all ages, from ages 8 to age 80 and beyond, as well. And so that also includes protecting cultural heritage in communities. So older buildings that are of importance to the community, maybe that are architecturally significant as well. And then planners also address social equity and inclusivity. So planning for welcoming communities. A colleague of mine at the University of Waterloo is studying how planning policies can be more welcoming for newcomers. Since we have a significant proportion of newcomers coming to Canada. I think 20% of our population is actually immigrants. And in the Toronto area, that is even higher. It's closer to 50%, which is just wonderful as far as diversity, and but that also poses some challenges with around, how do we accommodate for different all different needs of all different ages, all different cultures and backgrounds too. So planners play a big role in that as well. So I am just going to ask that Tina launch the poll now. And I'm just interested, which of these problems are you most interested in solving, or which of these 6 really resonate with you? And if there's something else that I didn't speak to, feel free to type it in the chat as well. But I find a lot of planners have a very interesting story about how they found the planning profession, or how they got into city building as well. Right, seeing a split here, fairly even. Yeah, there's a good sort of split. They're all different interests across the board. I know for me in particular, I had no clue that urban planning was even a profession when I was doing my undergraduate degree in environmental studies. And it was through working a little bit in the field. I was a sustainability coordinator at the time that I got the chance to work with some planners and work on some sustainable development guidelines. And it clicked for me that individual behaviors and trying to encourage people to make sustainable choices will only take you so far if the built environment isn't conducive to making more sustainable choices, and having things like local food nearby, access to different transportation options beyond just single occupancy vehicle as well. So right, I think we had a good, poll is ended. Can you share those results too, Tina?
Yeah, for sure. Just give me one moment. Can you guys see? Can everyone see the shared results?
Yeah, that will make for an interesting discussion, and I think aligns with a lot of planning programs, university programs have specializations as well in some of these areas too. So looks like the majority were also interested in addressing climate change and protecting the natural environment, followed by creating vibrant and healthy communities. Placemaking is often really interesting to people, being able to animate public spaces and have them reflective of the community's interests and needs too. There are all sorts of parks planners that plan parks for cities, or consultants that plan parks for multiple cities. And then also social equity and inclusivity came up pretty high, followed by housing and mobility too, and then supporting prosperity. So interesting. We can definitely dive into those more later. So planners work across many sectors. They work across the public sector, the private sector, the nonprofit sector. They work across many different areas as well. So I mentioned the problems that planners solve. They work as transportation planners in urban design, in development, approvals as well. There are planners that work for utilities to decide on where your electricity infrastructure will go. There are planners who work on behalf of school boards to determine how many schools are needed, and acquire the lands for those schools and make decisions around how to accommodate students at different schools as well. There are campus planners at post-secondary institutions that plan for new residence buildings and other new educational buildings and facilities on campus. And also there are, I would say, the most sort of common and the largest amount of planners do work in government. So they work for your local municipalities, your cities, your town governments, regional governments as well. They work for the provincial government or the federal government. So a lot of the ministries, provincial and federal, all have planners working in those departments too. So for example, like Parks Canada has parks planners, or Ontario Parks. There are planners at the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry that plan as it relates to natural resources as well. Aggregate and mining sector planners who deal with the impacts of those sectors. There are planners who do research in academia as well on all different topics. There are many planners, like I would say the second largest sort of type of planners are in the private sector, are in planning consulting firms. So they represent developers. They do work for municipalities that don't have enough in-house planning staff too. So there's a lot of roles in the private sector. A lot of land developers have planners on staff to research their either prospective sites that they're looking to acquire, or get the land approvals and permissions for whatever it is that they want to build on those sites. So those are your private sector planners. And then there's lots of planners in the nonprofit sector too. They do a lot of research. They do a lot of, like I mentioned, 8 to 80 cities, a lot of animation of public spaces. So they do have consulting contracts with different cities as well, depending on their mission and the kind of work that they do too. But a lot of research. So when I was in my master's program, I actually worked with the Canadian Urban Institute, which is a nonprofit as well. They were, at the time they were called Toronto Atmospheric Fund, but now they're called the Atmospheric Fund. And they're also a nonprofit in Toronto that does work around climate change and climate adaptation as well. So planners work across many, many different sectors. Back to the goals and objectives of planning, they deal with land and resources as well. So it's very much the external environment. Planners do not really deal with architectural details of buildings or the interior of buildings as well. It's the sort of larger macro built environment and external spaces too. So planners work across disciplines and bring ideas together. So planners collaborate and coordinate with architects, engineers, other types of technical experts. These could be people carrying out environmental studies, for example. Planners also work with interest groups, with agencies as well. So I mentioned the utilities, of course. Also, like Canada Post is an agency that planners deal with. There are planners also deal with rights holders. So Indigenous communities as well, to get input on development projects, on planning policy updates. They work with the community, of course, the public, property owners, and politicians who are the decision makers. So planners make recommendations to the politicians who then make the final decision on whether or not a development is approved or policies are approved or capital projects are going to move forward. And planners engage, facilitate, and mediate discussions, and they collaborate to find solutions that work. So part of the role of planners is to balance all of these inputs from all of the various technical experts, the public, the political environment as well, and propose solutions. So when I said planners are problem solvers, they really are problem solvers too.
Sorry, Kristy, don't mean to interject. Just wanted to be cognizant of time. If we can wrap up around like 8:20-ish would be great. Thank you.
That totally works. Okay, so this is just another quick day in the life of a planner.
Bus stops go, but what about bike lanes? Or who's working on improving housing? Hey, I'm Brittany. I'm a 26-year-old urban planner based in New York City, and planners play a big role in those questions. I get asked a lot about what I do on a day-to-day basis, so let's go to the office. I work in the private sector, so I'm on a lot of different projects with different clients, which translates to no day looks exactly the same. I work on projects that touch all of these things. And at the center of it all is people, data, and place. So a lot of my day-to-day work is data analysis, doing community engagement, and lots of writing. I love this work because at the end of the day, it's all about making cities better for people. If you have any questions about working as a planner, just let me know.
So that was by Brittany, and she has a very popular TikTok account as well. So highly encourage you to check them out at Sign Brit. So at this point, I want you to just think about what problems do you want to solve and what impact might you want to have in your future career in city building. And that could be, as an urban planner, that could also be as an engineer or as an architect or as a landscape architect as well. That could be as a community development coordinator too. So there's lots and lots of different options, but maybe just take note of these questions and start to think about them as you make decisions about where you want to go with your career when you're thinking about potential post-secondary options or other paths as well. So try to think about what skills you're good at. So planners use quite a bunch of different skills, but at the core of it is research, critical thinking, creativity, communication skills. So good writing and technical writing skills, good public-facing writing skills, presentation skills as well. You're often communicating and presenting to different groups of people, and computer skills. So that includes things like geographic information systems, so creating maps, creating designs or concepts. So it's much like Roblox or SimCity or those types of computer programs where you're designing communities or designing sites as well. And things like graphic design are also handy. So I'll just do a couple of these in the interest of time, but really so many interests can be connected back to planning. I always tell my partner that, everything is related to planning. So I think we can play a game of 6 degrees of urban planning separation. So even like I mentioned, a zookeeper, or I've also worked with other people from career paths where you think that maybe it's not a close fit, like a pastor, who have transitioned into planning using a lot of transferable skill sets too. So I'll just open it up if anyone wants to type an area of interest in the chat that they don't think is maybe related to urban planning, and I can try to connect it back. And maybe while you think about that, while people think about what areas of interest they might have, I will talk a little bit about how do I actually become a planner. So the most common way to become a planner is through an accredited undergraduate degree in planning. So there are a number of schools that offer these accredited. So accredited is a recognized degree program by the Professional Standards Board for the planning profession in Canada. Some of the popular planning programs in Ontario are, of course, our sponsor, Toronto Metropolitan University, has a great undergraduate and graduate urban planning program. University of Waterloo, where I'm studying as well, and I mentioned is the largest planning school in Canada. They have a really great undergraduate co-op program, which actually allows you to work in 4 or 5 placements over your degree. So you actually get to do work as a planner along the way and test out different areas of planning. And Queen's University has a planning program in Kingston. And then at the graduate level, University of Toronto has a master's in an accredited master's in planning. They also have an unaccredited degree in urban studies and urban planning. So, and York University has a master's in an accredited master's in environmental studies and urban planning, and they have an undergraduate non-accredited urban studies program. So those would be the most popular options in this area, but there are also the option of becoming a planner through pursuing a related degree like urban studies, environmental studies, geography, sociology, or politics, depending on your interest area as well. And if you're thinking that you're more of a technically inclined person, or your career path or your sort of educational journey may take you going a college route instead of a university route, there are also accredited college programs through the Association of Certified Planning Technicians. So one of the programs that I teach in, Seneca College, has an accredited program through the Certified Planning Technicians for their Sustainable Planning and Development program. And it's just a more technical focused program. So you learn a lot more about how to create the maps and those types of skills as well. And then there are a lot of planners who also combine degrees and accreditations with architecture, with landscape architecture, with urban design, with civil engineering, or environmental or transportation engineering, or project management too. So it's not the kind of career where you need to just wear one hat as well. And then I don't see anything in the chat, but I will just wrap up by sharing just some of my favorite planning and city building career resources that even if you don't pursue a membership with these organizations, they have a lot of free, valuable resources, or they offer a lot of webinars and other sessions that you can attend as a non-member as well. So the ACSP is the Association of Collegiate Schools of Planning in Canada and the US. So if you're interested in planning programs in Canada and the US, you can find them there. The Urban Land Institute Toronto is a great resource if you're interested in real estate development as well. Canadian Institute of Planners, like I mentioned, the American Planning Association has quite a lot of resources. They actually have 40,000 members, whereas in Canada we have 7,000. So they have a lot of research and resources on their website. Canadian Association of Certified Planning Technicians. And on that website, they have a list of all of the different programs, college programs that offer planning related programs. The Ontario Professional Planners Institute is the governing institute and association for registered professional planners in Ontario. And there are other counterparts in other provinces and territories as well. And the Professional Standards Board regulates the planning profession in Canada. Other resources, Planetizen is a US-based website. They have all sorts of online courses. 8 to 80 Cities, like I mentioned, they often have a call for volunteers to actually do some cool project work. Spacing is an urbanism publication online. It's really great. Lots of great articles, blog posts. Canadian Urban Institute regularly hosts webinars. They do research about urbanism all across Canada. Smart Density is a private consulting firm, but they have hosted a number of webinars, workshops. They have recordings on their website that you can see. Gil Penalosa, who ran for mayor of Toronto, who's also involved with 8 to 80 Cities, has a free webinar where he brings in guests who are in city building from all across the world to talk about really cool projects and ideas. So highly recommend the Cities for Everyone webinar and signing up for those. And then the University of Alberta has a really great open source, you can do it for free, course called Indigenous Canada. And then I really like, this is a planning graduate from Dalhousie, UT Lee, and they have actually a documentary series all about different planning topics. It's based in Western Canada in Vancouver, but just interesting ideas of where a career in city building could take you as well. And this is just to stay in touch with me. So you can find me on Instagram. I'm fairly active over there at Passionate Planning. On LinkedIn, you can just search up my name. I love to connect with anyone. And then this is just my business website as well. And I have a blog on there where other planners have actually shared their perspectives, as well as some interesting different options for career paths, promoting sort of recent graduates, entrepreneurial journeys, and so on. So, all right. I just see in the chat here, if someone's interested in business and economics, how does urban planning relate to these subjects? So definitely economic development or development pro formas. So if you're really interested in business development, you could work in economic development with local government to promote business development within the community. You could also work as a consultant for businesses. So a lot of consulting firms have, for example, Walmart or Canadian Tire are their clients. So they assist with developing new sites, or where there's development on sites next to those sites, or larger policy initiatives, they will have a planner actually representing their interests in the process to provide comments. How can someone with an accredited degree in architecture work as an intern architect in Ontario? So accredited degree in architecture. So I would presume you would go through the Ontario Architects Association, and they might have a accreditation program like we do for planning, that's for registered professional planners as well. what do I think about smart cities? I think they're definitely the way of the future. I had the privilege of being involved in Durham Region's broadband strategy, which was their strategy for high speed, like fiber optic cable internet, and how to get the region more connected as well. So there's also the Internet of Things. So a lot more sort of devices in cities are becoming smart, like smart traffic lights. As well, there's a lot of potential for data analytics to actually inform city building and how we organize and plan cities. Of course, there's a lot of concerns around data and privacy that need to be sorted out. If you're particularly interested in that, I would encourage you to look up what happened with the Sidewalk Labs project in the Toronto waterfront. I know Toronto Metropolitan University, there's a researcher there, Pamela, I believe.
Pamela Robinson, I believe.
Yeah, Pamela Robinson, who does a lot of research in the area of smart cities as well. So,
And for some upcoming events, our third Connect webinar will be on how to effectively conduct community engagement, and will be occurring on Wednesday, November 8th, which is also World Town Planning Day, and it'll be from 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. with guest speaker Alex Mikulis, who is a senior project manager for community engagement at Bouse Fields. And there will also be another office tour, which will be at Double Dam Architecture and Design, which is a multidisciplinary design studio recognized for creating innovative and environmentally responsible design solutions. And it will be on Friday, November 17th from 12 to 2 p.m., which is also a PA day for many of you. So you'll be able to attend, and you'll be able to meet professionals, ask questions, learn about the firm and what architects do, and get a tour of the place. And lunch will also be provided. So stay tuned for our registration signups. And if you haven't already, make sure to check out our social media. Our TikTok and Instagram is at OneUpToronto. And we also have our website and email listed here. And we also have a Discord channel that you can join, which you can scan the QR code to stay up to date with our events. And that's all. Thank you for joining us for our second webinar, and have a good evening.
All right. Thanks so much, Catherine, for walking us through that. I'll just stop sharing my screen for now. So yeah, hope everyone enjoyed and found it really informative. Thank you, Kristy, so much for sharing your slides and your knowledge as well in the planning field. I guess I did see some more questions, or if anyone had any more questions, feel free to type in the chat. If that's okay, Kristy, if you wanted to stay on for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I have a few more minutes.
Amazing.
And if people have hopped off or that sort of thing, they can feel free to shoot me a message or an email.
I have a question. I don't know if anyone's been interested in it, if you don't mind, Kristy. In regards to planning and law, how often do you see people transition from being a planner to being a lawyer? And how different is that?
Lots, actually. One of the summer interns that was at one of the municipalities that I worked at, they did their undergraduate degree in planning, and then they went into law after that. And actually, at York University, where I did my master's, they have a combined like law program and Masters of Environmental Studies, like in the same department as well. So we actually did our planning law course with the Osgoode law students too. But a lot of work in planning also involves interpretation of, for example, legislation like the Planning Act. And there are appeals of development decisions and that type of thing. So there is quite a lot of legislation interpretation, working with lawyers, or often lawyers actually have planners on staff. So there are a lot of the major law firms like Aird & Bearless in Toronto that they do planning law and municipal law as well.
Yeah, no, that's really true. As someone who works in the planning field right now, definitely a lot of interpretation, policy, and law that you have to work with for sure. But some really amazing insight. I don't see anyone asking any questions in the chat or anyone unmuting, so I'm assuming everyone is satisfied for tonight.
Yeah, awesome. They can shoot me, like I said, shoot me a message on Instagram or LinkedIn if they have a question that pops up at a later date. So
Right.
it's great. Thanks so much. I hope everyone has a good night.
Thank you. You too. Thanks. Bye. Have a good night, everyone.